Welcome to No Rules to Live By, where we weigh the rules we adopt and shed to live a fulfilled and balanced life. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Today's topic is meat. Why we eat it, why we love it, all the question marks, and just everything around it right now. It is like such a hot topic, which is so funny to me because it's like what people have been eating since the beginning of time. So we want to unpack that today. Brianna and I, spoiler alert, are big meat eaters and love it for many reasons. Mostly its taste and nutritional value. But yeah, we kind of want to unpack that today because we feel like there's a lot of strong opinions around there. I think there's a lot of people that maybe came up like not eating a ton of meat and are like curious and like want to figure out how to work it into their diets. And yeah, we just want to like kind of debunk some of the myths around beef and eating meat to nourish your body.
Yeah, it's really wild that it's a polarizing topic. I think that a lot of people were kind of fed this idea that meat is bad for you. Obviously, we were raised eating meat. It's something that even since I was a kid, I loved, and I would, crave lamb chops and ribs and all these different meats. But it's also understandable that after decades of people being told that it, caused cancer or heart disease, that became a source of fear.
Yeah. Bri, I still remember a visual from our childhood of Brianna being like 3 feet tall, sitting at a restaurant, ordering a full rack of lamb chops, and like waiters just laughing, and she would eat the whole thing. So it goes way back in terms of being carnivores. And yeah, I think like, there's so much fear in nutrition and in health. And, for a long time, I think it was this cholesterol fear. And now it's kind of evolved into this fear of inflammation, which is a whole other topic. But it does just feel like there's a lot of confusion out there in terms of what A causes like cholesterol to start, and then B, like what now is leading to inflammation, which I feel like is just another. It's like very similar in terms like inflammation causes cholesterol. It's just so funny to me that people demonize beef and don't take a look at the processed foods that they're eating. It's like, no, it's definitely not the Fritos or the snackables or the pita pockets. It must be the cow.
Right, and there are studies that I've been reading, really looking into different causes of cancer and disease. This study that I'm referencing is specifically in regards to colon cancer, but they were looking at a population and that was eating meat, and the result basically said, okay, yes, that these people who are in what we call like civilized society and they are able to afford meat, they also consume a ton of sugar, and they're also in these Western cultures, specifically the United States, where our diet is also full of processed foods and seed oils and all these other products of living in our society that do cause disease. And then, it's easy to look at one factor of that and create correlation. And that's why there's so many silly studies out there, because you're looking at something in a silo and you're looking at one thing and this is why both Alicia and I are proponents of holistic health, because it's important to look at all aspects of the situation.
Yeah, definitely. I was reading Peter Attia's book, Outlive, and he talks a lot about these studies, and I think just studies in general, but the ones he refers to around meat eating essentially are inconclusive. And like a lot of times, it's not like they're like isolating people and controlling their diet in a profound way, especially not like back, in like mid-century when this kind of demonic storyline around meat came to be. They were pulling their data from like loose surveys on what people like remembered eating. And so essentially you have to like take, especially a lot of the older studies, with like a grain of salt. And it is really hard to know in a conclusive way, like the connection. I remember I started really getting into this whole topic when I started listening to The Genius Life, which is a podcast by Max Lugavere. And his whole mission is to understand the science of food so that people can really like nourish their bodies and nourish their brains. What he kind of explains in terms of like the importance of eating meat is really just the nutritional profile, and that like the vitamins you get from beef are just so much more complex and more rich than any other nutrient source in terms of B12, amino acids, just everything like that makes us up. Like if you think about, we're animals, we're made of protein, fat, and water. And so being able to eat those types of nutrients to like regenerate our cells is really powerful. And to the point too where, something I'd never thought I would have gotten into if you'd asked me like 10 years ago, like that we ever eat a chicken liver or beef liver or beef heart or tongue or think I haven't eaten a tongue yet. I will digress, but I would say like hell freaking no. But
That's the line.
I've come a long way, and I have noticed that in mixing in beef and chicken liver into my diet, and there are very like more palatable ways you can ingest it by taking like desecrated organs in like a pill form. So you don't have to think about it. You can take like the perfect little amount every day to space it out. So that's one option, but also like occasionally I'll like prepare it. It's not the best. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna say I crave it, but I notice a profound difference in terms of my like energy levels.
One way that I love to eat beef liver, and this is a really simple recipe that I learned a couple of years ago when I got really into the work of Weston A. Price. And it's basically just butter, a shallot, white wine, and then you cook the liver. To prepare the liver, you soak it. Always soak liver in milk overnight. It'll get rid of some of the tanginess. And then basically you blend it and strain it, and that's a delicious liver pate. I feel very elegant, with some sourdough bread and some liver pate. It's a great way to eat it, but it's also really labor intensive, so you can't do that all the time. But yeah, that's one way that I really like to incorporate organ meat.
That sounds delicious. Definitely a lot of steps, and I feel like you have to be careful too because you have to like eat it right away, right?
You can freeze it, but yeah.
Oh, you can freeze it. Okay, that's good. The one way I've made chicken liver is just with a lot of Moroccan or Egyptian or Indian spices, like the strongest flavors you can get in there. In like some avocado oil and maybe some chilies, and you really just want to like flavor the shit out of it, basically, with lots of peppers and onions. But honestly, I'm gonna be real. I just take those like Heart and Soil supplements. You can order them online. They're all like grass fed, and I just take a couple of those every day. I have like a whole collection. I kind of like mix and match with my mood. So as I like just don't even have to think about it, and I don't have to prepare liver for dinner.
We dove right into organ meats, but the easiest way to start eating meat is to incorporate, beef and chicken and pork. And these are all obviously more palatable, and they are bioavailable, not only proteins, but all of the minerals, the essential minerals, as well as what are deemed non-essential. And animal protein is really the only way that we have like bioavailable like zinc and B12, along with a host of other essential nutrients.
Now, something I want to touch on, Brie, is I feel like there's a lot of conversation around grass fed. We
Yeah,
see it in the
I
grocery stores, and there's a huge price difference. And there's all these things on the labels, and it's not just beef. Chicken, eggs, everything. We have to be on the defense when we're in the grocery store because a lot of times the labels are trying to mislead you, but there are some certain things that are important to look out for, especially as it pertains to beef. It's my understanding that essentially in these big farms, cows are being fed essentially like food byproduct, which is a lot of soybean oil and a lot of like corn meal, things that aren't they're in their natural diet. Beef, like they can graze, they'll eat all sorts of insects and they're mostly vegetarian, but just the diet that they're gonna get naturally, being able to like graze outside is vastly different than soy byproduct bullshit.
Right. You want
So
your meat and your dairy from what the happy cows, right? Cows that were got to live in their natural environment, and just like we say, we are what we eat. If you extrapolate that to the food cycle, if you're eating meat as a way of getting your nutrients, if that cow was malnourished, then you are not getting the benefits of eating meat.
also that can be misleading on the package too, because like a lot of times it will say grass fed, but then they'll fatten up the cows with those types of byproducts as well. So you really want to take it a step further, you really want to be looking for grass fed, grass finished. And all that means is that they just ate grass and like grazed outside. Versus they got like stuffed with a bunch of corn and soy stuff like towards the end of their life to fatten them up and make them ready to be butchered.
Alicia, where do you source your meat from?
Well, I have like a couple of places. I like to find farms that I really like. I first started by finding a farm that's actually pretty local in upstate New York, and this is like super random, but he's a client of, I go to a chiropractor. He's like a holistic wellness chiropractor that my family and I have gone to our whole life. Our chiropractor, Scott, who we should 100% have on the pod, is just really into holistic everything. He's taught us so much about the right supplements, diet, posture. He's had like a profound impact on my life. And one of the cool ways is that one of his clients is also a really like high quality farmer in upstate New York. And so he brings boxes of meat to Scott's. You like place your order and he'll like bring you like a big box of different cuts of his organic grass fed beef. But when I'm not doing that, if I'm just like at the grocery store, I just look for grass fed beef. I do go to Whole Foods. It is a bit pricier than other grocery stores, but I find that it's worth it. And I do things to like make the meat go further in terms of making like big stews with veggies and things of that nature, and getting like the leaner cuts and like experimenting with some of the cheaper cuts, because it is like beef can be really expensive, especially if you're going the grass fed route. So I would say like my advice would be to just get the highest quality cut you can afford, but to try as often as you can to really go the grass fed route. And if
Yeah,
you're not going to be able to do the grass fed route, then I recommend going for like a leaner cut. So something that I learned through Max, who I mentioned, is that something to do with the way like the fat is stored in the cow's meat, that the harmful effects of the kind of byproduct these cows are eating is really stored in their fat cells. So you're worse off eating like a fatty cow from a farm than you would be to eat like the filet mignon or the like 93% lean blend. So I sometimes I'll do that.
Yeah. And grass fed beef is a great source of omega 3 fats, vitamin B12, vitamin E, and other nutrients, even such as creatine. So that's why people who are trying to build muscle they really need that bioavailable nutrients and protein. And it's really interesting. There's different studies of both the remains of ancient cultures and even modern day school children that eating meat not only makes you taller and stronger, but it also makes you more active and has improvements on your mental health because you're really nourishing your body fully. And to just a side note on about the price of meat, it's funny because while organ meats are probably the least popular, they actually, if you go to a butcher, they're the cheapest because no one wants them.
Yeah, and that's changing too. Now
Really?
they're becoming cool again. Yeah, it's definitely becoming more popular, especially liver, I've noticed. But but yeah, for chickens, for example, like one hack is to just I'll buy the whole chicken, and a lot of times that will come with the liver inside. And so one thing I do among many of my little like kitchen hacks is I'll like collect all the little chicken livers. So I buy probably a roast chicken every week, and I roast it, and we'll eat that for like dinner one night, lunch the next day, and then I'll make broth from it. But then I'll also keep the livers in a jar in my freezer, and once they like, it's like I know, once it's like
Liver
enough to
jar.
make, yeah, I literally have a liver jar. Then I'll do the kind of Egyptian spice combo that I mentioned, and yeah, make a little
Yeah,
meal.
you've gotta do the milk soak. That's like a key
Yeah,
part.
I don't think I did that. Maybe I'll like it more if I do the milk soak. I've definitely not been doing that.
Yeah, it gets rid of the a little bit of the almost like acidy taste that liver has for whatever reason, like which is what makes it unpopular. But there's ways to remedy that.
Yeah, another thing people will do, I haven't done this yet, but I've heard about it, is you could I mean, those desiccated like supplements that you're buying, it's just dehydrated liver or other organ meat and they put it in a gel cap. So what you could do too is you could buy a beef or a chicken liver and you can like cut it into little slices and just put it in your freezer and you can just swallow like a little frozen liver like a pill. I haven't gone there yet. I'm open to it, but but yeah, it's another option that's just more economical way to get organ meat consistently in your diet.
Yeah, I will say I went through a brief phase of being pescatarian because I, was buying this idea that meat was bad for me, and I actually went to my doctor and got blood tests and found that I was really low in ferritin, which I can only get from meat, and my doctor told me to start eating meat again, and I kind of had this like oh moment. Wow, okay, so I guess I was actually not doing what was right for my health that I thought that I was. And it's really interesting, and we started this episode saying like I was a really big eater as a kid, and it's funny how sometimes like really your intuition just following that and not like doing what feels right. Like if you eat meat and it feels good to you, like don't let anything tell you that you shouldn't be doing that. And I want to read this excerpt from the study of women who they found that women who didn't eat 3 to 4 servings of beef per week were twice as likely to be depressed or suffer from an anxiety or bipolar disorder. And I find that really really interesting. And it was a study done in Australia where cows are grass fed by default. And I think that that's really poetic in a way. I think it just makes a lot of sense that if you're have access to grass-fed, grass-finished beef and you're eating it regularly, you are more nourished, and then you're less likely to have, psychological ramifications. And because if you feel malnourished, like, of course, your nervous system is in a state of stress and your body is trying to survive.
Yeah, I think it's just so easy for people to like look one way and avoid looking the other way. Like if you look at your diet and it's maybe not what you want it to be, like maybe you've gained weight, maybe you're feeling inflamed, maybe you're having health issues, and it's like, yeah, it must be the meat. Where it's like, all right, well, like let's look at like how are you eating meat? Like, let's look at your plate. Are you out at like Chili's and you're having like beef quesadillas with a side of tortilla chips, and then you're having like a chocolate lava cake, and you're having like 4 glasses of wine with that meal? and you're like, that's the beef. It's got to be the beef. Or are you eating like a nice grass finished steak with like steamed broccoli and like a baked sweet potato and like maybe some, I don't know, like nuts and a banana or for like a something sweet after just looking at how whole are your foods and what else are you mixing in that meat? I think meat is used to make extremely rich meals, and sometimes, oftentimes, it's easy to look to like blame meat for what is really sugar and
Right.
processed foods.
And also making sure that your diet of meat is complemented by high quality fats, because protein can't be adequately utilized without dietary fats. And it's interesting, or they've seen in low fat diets, even low fat, high protein diet, there are problems in the depletion of vitamin A and vitamin D because your body's not able to adequately absorb the protein. But that's saying it's more important to have the protein. Like inadequate protein can also contribute to coronary heart disease. And that's what's so interesting about these studies is that there are studies that show that it not eating meat really leads to heart disease and eating meat leads to heart disease. And it's like you can't win.
Yeah. I think we're really lucky that we were raised in a very high protein household and a very healthy household. I feel like our mom really just made lean chicken, turkey, beef, salmon with like rice and some type of like steamed or sauteed veggie, like for the most part every night. And we also were, instead of like snacks or sugars, like we were always encouraged to like have something satiating, have like a couple turkey slices or have like some leftovers instead of going for like the Oreos or the Nabiscos or whatever. And so I think that's always been like a big part of our fabric. But I do find like a lot of people that I talk to, what they think is a normal amount of protein and is like way off base. And they are definitely not eating enough protein. And a lot of times starting their day off with something starchy. So yeah, I think it's so important to pair, first of all, pair your protein with a healthy fat and also carbs. Like
Oh,
what does
so
the goddess say?
glucose goddess, who I love, and I really love her diet hacks. But one of the things she says is to never like eat your carbs naked, like put clothes on your carbs, and that basically just means put a fat source on your carbs. So even like putting butter on your bread is like the simplest example, but it actually reduces the amount your glucose levels will spike from eating it.
Yeah, and you can feel
So
it, like whether you have just like a cookie or you have, even if you put like peanut butter on your cookie, like you're gonna feel like less lethargic and you're not gonna get that little headache and have that sugar crash that you would.
right. So a good principle is to have about your body weight in protein. So a 1 gram of protein for every pound that you weigh. If you can just try to hit that, usually people recommend like a little bit more. If you can hit that, then you're doing well. And I think that sometimes it can feel hard when you're not used to it. Like I don't eat eggs, which are an amazing source of vitamins and minerals and choline, and I can't have them. And so I started even having like ground beef for breakfast some days if I have it, ground beef or ground pork with rice, and like have that as my breakfast.
Nothing wrong with that.
But it's and actually I usually slice an avocado in there. It's delicious. And also another thing, buying ground meats. I love ground meat just because it's delicious, but it's also usually a lot cheaper than buying like the cuts themselves.
Yeah, I'll also like I'll blend different types of ground meat. So I'll if I'm making like a chili or a bolognese, or I'll make like picadillo, I'll buy 1 pack of beef and I'll buy 1 pack of pork. And I'll make like a big batch that'll last, like I'll freeze half of it for like a whole nother meal. It'll last a few days. So yeah, you can experiment with different blends. I actually got that. I got that KitchenAid meat blender, Brie. I haven't experimented with it yet, but
Wow, it's a whole blender just for meat.
so you attach it to like your KitchenAid, and then you can
Hmm.
like the KitchenAid mixer. It's like an extension, and you can buy different types of meats, and you can blend them and make your own sausages or burgers or whatever.
Wow.
So yeah, feedback coming soon, but I'm excited about that. But yeah, I would say, but like those different packs are more economical, and you can blend them. Will loves to mix and match. Like he'll buy like the Force of Nature's like elk, or I actually love ground
Nathan.
bison.
Mm-hmm.
Bison's my
Me
favorite.
too.
I won't mix it with much because I just love it all by itself because it's very lean, it's very flavorful. But like we'll mix like elk and lamb or pork and venison just to keep things interesting.
And they all
So
have such different flavors. Like eating
they
pork
do.
and eating lamb are like totally different experiences. And it just makes me sad when people don't eat meat because I'm like, you're missing out on like all of my favorite foods. It actually reminds me of the Big Fat Greek wedding where she marries the vegetarian and he goes, oh, like I don't eat meat. And she goes, it's okay. We'll make lamb. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that movie.
Um,
Um,
But yeah, it's delicious and nobody wants to be anemic. It doesn't like if you're low in iron, you're low in vitamin B12, you have all of these different both psychological and physiological symptoms where you don't feel good. And I've experienced like just really not feeling good. And sometimes you go out and you need a steak and you're like body thanks you and you say I feel so good.
yeah. I actually stopped eating steak for a few years. Not like intentional, like I wasn't eating it. I just wasn't around
Mhm.
it when I feel like when I was in college. And because just like I wasn't gonna get it at the dining hall. I wasn't, I was eating like pasta. I was living off like pasta and pizza. And my friend Meg and I, we got into this ritual because we like went to the like inn in our college town, and we both would get filet mignons and a glass of red wine. And we felt so good because we hadn't had it in probably like months. And so it became like a ritual. Like every couple weeks, we would just peel off, go to the inn, have filet, and feel great. So there is like something so instinctual about it because your body, it's like you crave it because your body wants all those yummy vitamins and stuff and
Yeah.
that nourishment.
I went to what's it called? St. Anselm.
Oh, that's that steakhouse in Brooklyn.
Y- yes, so I went to St.
I have been
Anselm.
dying to go there.
I went there the night of the Super Bowl to get a good steak before I went and pretended to care about football, and it was really really good. We should go sometime. And they have really high quality steaks, and
I'm
it
so
was
in.
so delicious.
Also, something that I love to make that just really spices up a steak is chimichurri. So
Mm.
you can do it with really any herb. I make a chimichurri with like parsley, cilantro, red pepper flakes, garlic, olive oil, and red wine vinegar. But you could mix it. You could put like mint, like any type of acid with fresh herbs and olive oil and I would say garlic. And if you don't like spice, you can omit the red pepper flakes. But like play around with those combos to make herbaceous toppings for your steak. It all herbs are
Totally
packed with
herbaceous.
totally unstable herbs, but they're totally packed with like tons of other vitamins that are really good for you, and they just make the steak incredible. I also will recommend getting a cast iron pan if you don't already have one,
Mm.
because if especially if you don't have access to like a grill, which I don't, the flavor on a cast iron is just that char you get is just so freaking delicious. And yeah, lots of yummy ghee
And
butter.
also, you'll get the iron in all of your meals from the cast iron pan, which will help increase your iron. And I was reading studies which were interesting in a couple of my different books here. Were saying that it is really good to cook at lower temperatures, and whether that be because of the char, but it does say that it is that the benefits of eating the meat are better, and obviously some of the ramifications, carcinogens and such, if you
Hmm.
cook it at a low temperature. It's supposed to be good. But that being said, I learned how to make a steak on my pan, on my in a cast iron or even a regular pan, from Frank, from your favorite restaurant,
Oh,
and
Frank Prisonzana. Hell yeah.
yeah, you buy a nice steak, you put it on your pan, you put a ton of butter in there, and you take a big spoon and you baste like the whole time it's cooking on high, and you're like basting the top and the bottom so that the butter is cooking the top, and it's perfect.
That's how you do it. Yeah, and on finding good steaks, Brie, just to come back to that point too, like farms are really figuring it out in terms of building their own like e-commerce platforms, and so you don't necessarily have to just find a farm that's near you. There's I've ordered from farms in Georgia, I've ordered from farms in Michigan, so a lot of them are like transforming their business into DTC and are doing it right and have like great regenerative practices and great like grass-fed options and all sorts of different types of meat offerings. So yeah, if you just Google like top regenerative farms US and just start doing your homework. I know also people love Butcher Box. I haven't tried that yet, but that's also a great option. There's so much out there that you don't
Or
even
even
really need to
famous
go to the
farms like
grocery
Ballerina
store.
Farms is obviously like really famous on Instagram, and they distribute their meat. I also will go to the farmers market if I have time on a Wednesday or Saturday, Sunday. I'll go to the farmers market and get it direct from
See
source.
what's up.
See what's
Get some
up.
raw milk. Get some
Yeah,
fresh
get
cheese.
some milk, get some yogurt. I'm back on eating like primarily full fat dairy, so sometimes I'll do lower fat, but I usually buy whole milk or at lowest 2%, and it's delicious. I actually even put usually half and half or heavy whipping cream in my coffee, and it's just one, it stabilizes my glucose level a little bit better. It helps my stomach with the acid of the coffee, for example, too. And so I think that basically it's like just do what feels good, but try to make sure that you're having it as high of quality as you can find. And another topic just to delve into is that you can't really talk about meat without acknowledging that there is a level of which some people don't eat meat for like religious reasons, for either fasts or, you know, Hindus I think don't eat most meats because of religious reasons, and that's kind of a different topic. I don't want to, you know, I think that the nutritional conversation is kind of separate from not eating meat for religious reasons, of course. I know even like in almost all religions, even it's Lent right now, and in Lent, most adults don't eat meat on Fridays, just as a form of fasting. But it's a pretty low key fast, so it doesn't get talked about a lot.
Yeah. I do think it's really interesting, and this is like a whole nother conversation, but getting into like traditions and why they exist, and whether it be like the practice of Lent and not eating meat, or, in Judaism, how there's a day of fast. It's like, why do these things exist? And I was a religion major, so like I really love this stuff. It's just like ancient wisdom, is like the root of it. For whatever reason, not eating meat once a week was probably just good for you. Not because meat is bad and we should demonize it and not eat it ever, but it's good to take a step back and like take a cleanse from something, or get into a little caloric deficit, which I'm sure they were doing when they weren't eating meat once a week, and that is good to do for a little while once a year. Or to fast for a day, which we know helps with cell regeneration and all of those benefits. So it's funny to look at these traditions and be like, oh yeah, it's just like their religion, but it's like it's also like a beautiful tradition that probably stemmed from it being making a lot of sense and helping people with their health. So they just kind of like worked it into a holiday.
Yeah, I wanna read this excerpt because I think that it talks about that exactly what you're getting at, where like there's two sides to the coin here. So like the wisdom of fasting, not eating meat, is justified by the fact that meatless diets often prove beneficial in the treatment of cancer and other diseases such as arthritis, kidney problems, and gout. But problems start to arise if the practice fasting from meat is continued too long, and these include caries, bone loss, nervous disorders, and reproductive ailments. So it's like, you know, you're getting benefits from restricting meat, you're also getting benefits from incorporating meat, and that's why we as humans are omnivores. It's like sometimes you need to have your veggies, and you also need to have your meats.
So eat your meat, find a good source, go to the farmer's market, do good things, love the world.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review, follow us, or share it with a friend. Have a great day, and remember, you make the rules.